Welcome to Tales from the Hellmouth, a Buffy and Angel podcast. Join your hosts Adam and Chris as they review episodes of the beloved shows and discuss the comics that have continued and expanded the Buffyverse. And now, Tales from the Hellmouth.
Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Hellmouth, a Buffy and Angel podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and I haven't done this in a while. It's been a while since I've recorded a Buffy-centric podcast. So to do that, I brought back a guest that is familiar to the podcast, because he's been on a couple of shows before. Most recently, we did some Moon Knight stuff. Chris Evans, and not the Chris Evans that played Captain America, but our good friend and podcasting cohort. So, Chris, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing very well, and it's always a fun time to talk the Buffy and Angel universe, and so I'm glad to do that with you because through our Twitter conversations, we discovered that we're both fans of the property, and we sparked some fan casting for a potential reboot down the road, if it ever happens, and then we're like, well, we should podcast about this, so.
It'll happen one day, and they'll owe us for the suggestions.
Yeah, and if they actually cast what we suggest, then I want some kickback.
Just let me see it early. That's all.
Yeah, that's all. Exactly. Just drop it into my my Google Drive, and we're good to go.
Right. You got my email.
Exactly. So the reason why this is kind of a good time to get back into the Buffy Angel podcasting routine is because we are currently in the 25th anniversary since the television series premiered. And so what better time than to restart and talk some Buffy. I know that is a lot of people kind of walk on eggshells now when they talk about these shows because the creator is is known to not be how can I put this delicately, the best individual in terms of personality and the way he goes about presenting himself and on set and with some actors and stuff like that. But as I always say, and you can give your opinion on this, Chris, in certain instances when you're dealing with shows or movies that you love, and you find out that the creator is not necessarily the nicest human being, you kind of, if possible, have to separate creator from piece of entertainment they're providing or they've provided, and so that's how. When I think of Buffy and Angel, I think of the cast and the crew that they put in a lot of hard work in producing content that I enjoyed, and so why should I have to stop celebrating that because of one individual? So that's my take on it. I don't know how you look at it.
It's pretty similar for me too. Yeah, Joss Whedon does not have a good reputation as a decent human. Yeah. I mean, there's no denying that at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I like the guy, but you can't. Like, I agree because these people worked hard on these shows. It wasn't just him, so I kind of can separate it. And also, I also look at things on a scale of 1 to Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I do it. If you're Kevin Spacey level, I'm sorry, I don't think I could watch it.
Yeah.
This is a little different.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we're still going to show our appreciation for the show and the content, despite that. But one of the ways that this Buffy the Vampire Slayer is being celebrated on its 25th anniversary is via various comic books, and one of them is a one-shot titled Buffy 97, and that's the book that we're mainly going to discuss today. But before that, because Chris has never been on this particular show on this network, let's get our history, our story with this franchise, on record. So, Chris, tell our audience how you found Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when you got into it, things like that.
Sure. I actually watched the movie when it came out, and I liked the movie,
Me too.
which I know is a rare thing. I thought the movie was really entertaining, even as a kid, because I think it came out in '92, so I was 6 years old when the movie came out. And I'd seen it a little bit, I think when it hit home video, which probably was about a year later or so. So I was still pretty young when I watched it, but I'd always liked vampire stuff. It was, even as like a little kid, it was my thing. I'd run around with an apron on my back screaming I was Dracula. So yeah, Buffy was immediately like, oh, this is cool. It's funny.
As long as you weren't biting people, it's good. Yeah, we're good.
I probably tried. I don't know. But, so Buffy was kind of like immediately, oh, this is cool, and it's funny. And I recognized Paul Rubens from Pee-wee.
Yes.
So automatic connection. Pee-wee's in this. I'm in. And so then when this series came out, I actually didn't know it was coming until like a day or two before. And at the time, I was a big WWF fan, and it was the same night as Raw.
Uh-oh.
So that was a conflict for me.
Yeah.
But I remember I watched the premiere, and it was just instant love. I love the universe they were presenting, and that it was I don't think I understood at the time it was a new Buffy. I thought it was a continuation, but it still worked for me, and I just really enjoyed it from then on. And I think a lot of when most people hear Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV series, they assume every episode is vampires, and that's all it is. But it was so much more than that.
Yeah, they really did expand the world in terms of the creatures and the monsters that she had to vanquish beyond just vampires. But yeah, it's funny because I'm in a similar boat as you. I saw the movie when it came out. I was 9 at the time. That was a pretty good year if it was 92, because it was Batman Returns and Buffy in 1 year. That's pretty good.
That's a solid year.
Yeah. I saw the movie. I enjoyed it. I mean, I know now that, I didn't get, but as a kid, like, I didn't get automatically the Pee Wee Herman connection, oddly enough. The whole. The reason I kind of sort of was clued into this thing was my sister used to love Beverly Hills 90210 and Luke Perry. So that's all she would talk about. And so I kind of watched it because she watched it, because she was watching it for him. And I was watching it because, well, my sister wants to watch it, so the hell. And so that's how it came about.
Good old Pike.
Yeah, so that was basically the sort of, and not later on when it hit home video, I was like, hey, wait a minute, Paul Rubens, and then it started clicking, right? So I got into it from that. I thought the movie was entertaining. I enjoyed it. And like you, Ivan, it's weird because I'm not a horror guy per se. Like, it's not my genre at all. But I have rare exceptions, and so it's like the horror space that I kind of operate in or enjoy, consuming, are like the classic Universal monster stuff.
Yeah.
So Dracula would be in there as well, Wolfman, all that jazz. Blade, obviously, from the Marvel character. I love Blade, and Buffy. So those are the three quote unquote horror franchises that I like. Like, you talk to me about Saw or Halloween or anything, it's like, yeah, I don't get it. I don't care.
Halloween?
It's just not my thing. Like the movie, like Halloween, as in the
No, I meant the movie.
yeah. Dress up and go out for candy. I'm cool with all that. That's fun. That's great. But yeah, just like the Jasons of the world, the Freddy Kruegers, that just isn't my thing. unless there was that one time where Alexa Bliss did a photo shoot as Freddy Krueger, then I'm on board. But other than, she did, yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I'll have to share some Twitter photos with you. But yeah, so it's like that's not really my genre, except for those 3 or 4 things. So it's like it's not like it's something that I was into, like the horror stuff from early on. This was just there's a particular set of things I like within the genre, and Buffy fell into that. When the show came out, I don't know that I had like a pre-awareness that it was coming, other than like maybe a week or so before I started seeing like commercials and stuff that was hyping it up a little bit. And like you, I was and still am to degrees a wrestling fan, and it was on Mondays opposite Raw. So it was like, all right, watch one and tape one. Which is it gonna? Which is it gonna be? But I think I did, at least for that premiere. I chose watch Buffy live and tape Raw, because I can't remember if Raw was a 3-hour show at that point, or if it was still 2 hours.
I want to say it was 2 hours. I don't remember which came on. Like if Buffy was at 7 or 8 my time, or I don't remember the time.
Yeah.
I think I would watch the first hour of Buffy, then catch the last hour of Raw.
Yeah.
Buffy was always the live watch for me.
Yeah. And that's probably makes sense, because you could, if you record wrestling, you can fast forward commercials and all the junk, right? So which I still do on the PVR, where it's like if I'm gonna watch Raw, I want to tape it so that if there's part of that 3 hours now that I don't want to watch, which is sometimes I find myself fast forwarding through about half of it. I could do that. So I remember watching it live, and I loved it because the tone was like, it still had that humorous side, but it was darker than the movie.
Much darker than the movie,
which I appreciated. I just liked the quote unquote Scooby Gang dynamic of it all. I thought that was played well from the start, and and just continued. And then, like a lot of people in 1997, I'm not going to say it's well publicized that I had a crush on Sarah Michelle Gellar, as with most people. So all those ingredients, and I was hooked. And certain shows that I could say I came into after a couple of episodes, or maybe after a season. But this show, I was there right from the beginning. And same with Angel, when Angel spun off. I've enjoyed it for 25 years, and I'm enjoying the expansion that we're getting in the comics from Boom Studio. There's a lot of good stuff. There's some filler stuff, but there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, before it was at Dark Horse, I think, right?
It was Dark Horse, and they did a lot over at Dark Horse.
Yeah, they did, and the cool thing that they did was they did follow-up seasons.
They did, and those were actually pretty cool, and they felt like the show.
Yeah,
for the most part. So that was a nice thing too. I like the Dark Horse stuff from what I read of it.
Yeah,
the Boom Studio stuff is nice too, but it's different.
Yeah, but and I remember. I think now, if you haven't ever gotten the Dark Horse stuff, I think Boom Studios is reprinting it.
Oh, are they?
In certain, I think they're called Legacy Volumes, where they're reprinting the other season, the Dark Horse stuff. Right, because that's the thing with a licensed IP. When it leaves one publisher to another, If you can't find copies of what's been released, like you ain't getting it. Like a lot of my non superheroic comics are digital, right? Now, especially now. So there were when it was transitioning from Dark Horse to Boom, even the digital copies, you couldn't get them. Like you go to Comixology, they're off the app. Mm-hmm. They were gone. So Boom is now reprinting those.
You know, though, I remember when the first issue of the Dark Horse book came out, mm-hmm. they made a motion comic of it, and it was available on iTunes. Mm-hmm. So I still have that because I downloaded it X amount of years ago. So it just sits on my account.
That's awesome.
It's like it's a little relic that I have. It's amazing.
That's awesome. And I remember one thing from the Boom era that I remember, the Dark Horse era. I remember, is the covers, because the covers were so like when they were drawn. It wasn't like a picture of Sarah Michelle Gellar or Xander or whoever. They were drawn by an artist, but they looked so much like the actor that played the character, which was impressive. And I've rarely seen that aside from Alex Ross. Like Alex Ross can do that, but Alex Ross is drawing these covers, right?
Lee Bermejo. I mean, very few. It's a very small group of artists who can do that.
But those covers, whoever was drawing them at the time, were capable of capturing the actors, which I liked. So what you said about the Boom stuff, of course, I mentioned the reprints, but they're also doing what they've chosen to do. Well, it's kind of twofold. They have a bit of a spoiler, but they have introduced a multiverse scenario. Mm-hmm. Where you can get stories featuring the Buffy and crew from the show that continues on from those seasons. Those versions of the characters pop up now and again. But we have the main timeline for Boom, which is a reboot timeline. And things are similar, but also can go in different directions as well. And I'm a fan of, to be honest, I'm a fan of both aspects, right? Because if they were just copying and pasting the show at this point, like if you're going to relaunch with the number one and you're just going to verbatim tell me stories that I've watched, that I spent, 7 years watching, that's not necessarily fun, right? This angle of there's going to be familiarity, but we're also going to take it in different directions, is intriguing because it's like, where are they going to go that I don't expect? It's kind of like Star Trek did this. I don't know if you remember
I'm kind of new with Star Trek. I like Strange New Worlds a lot.
Right. So when here's the example. When the J.J. Abrams movies came out, they had a Star Trek comic that was set in that timeline. Mm-hmm. And so what they did is they took stories from the original series episodes, and instead of going the same direction that those episodes did, at some point in the story, they took a diverging direction. And that would be what the JJ crew would have done, would be the alternate direction. Okay. And I like that because, again, there was the familiarity, but okay, where are they going to spin it? Mm-hmm. And so I'm a fan of both. Give me the classic Buffy, but also I'm cool with this brand new, version of it as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that because we're roughly 20 years removed from the finale of the show. I mean, it ended in 2003.
Yeah,
I think so. It's been 20 years roughly, and you can only go back to the well so many times.
Yeah.
And the way the series left off, of course, was Hellmouth was closed and all that. So if you're going to go back and retell it, you got to do something different. Yeah. I'm not saying do something wildly different, like change the whole idea, but you can tweak and go from there, make your own version. And you mentioned how they're doing this multiverse thing, and I really appreciate that because you're getting all kinds of flavors that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to like everything. Just find something you like.
Yeah, and that's ingenious. I mean, if you would have told me this 5 years ago, the idea of a Buffy multiverse would never have popped into my head.
Right.
But now I'm like, wait a minute, that makes a whole shit ton of sense because why not? I mean, we're dealing in a world of vampires and werewolves and fairies and all kinds of witches and all kinds. Why would alternate universes be an issue? Like, right. why would if that's a stumbling block for you after all the things I just said? Well,
you know what? We saw the multiverses in the show even.
Yeah.
Like there was the evil Willow, the vampire Willow. We saw glimpses of this anyway, so it makes sense. Yeah. But what's funny that if you would have asked me 5 years ago, like you said, I would have said, no, just reboot the thing. Just give me what I had. But now I think I'm just more open to it. Yeah. And like I said, you don't even have to like everything. I don't like Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer. Right, I love the concept of it, but I don't like
the execution. Yeah, the execution didn't work for you. Which is fine. I'd still like to see Sarah Michelle Gellar do a miniseries on TV of that. Yeah, give me that. I'd be
all in for that.
I'll take it. Yeah, anything. Like they got me watching. Side note, I've committed to watching the Wolfpack thing.
Oh yeah, me too.
From the friggin'
the
Teen Wolf universe. Why? Because they put Sarah Michelle Gellar. I'm like, all right, you got me. Now what is this?
You have sold me.
Yeah, like she ccame out on stage at Comic-Con. I'm like, damn it, I'm in.
Right. It's like that the GIF. When I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Or take my money.
Right. The Futurama guy. Take my money.
Yeah. So I like that there are comics now, and maybe over the course of a few episodes, Chris and I can pick and pull and choose some to go through. But that'll be later on. But so I mean, I'm glad that this franchise has endured 25 years. In terms of outside of comics, will there ever be a reboot? Probably at some point.
They were talking about it as
a couple years ago.
Yeah. And it was going to be without Joss, of course, which...
Well, I think it started with Joss involved, but then, all the stuff with him started to snowball. And that's probably why they're like, maybe we should pull the brakes on this for a bit.
Yeah, and then there was going to be one without him, I believe.
Yeah.
But they were changing a lot. I think the issue with a reboot is they're going to try to stay in the same vein when I don't think that's the thing to do. I think now you just do a story about a vampire slayer. You don't have to make the Scooby Gang and all that again.
Right. So you're saying, because look, I think you and I can both agree that at some point it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, it's happening.
I mean, look at Hollywood. They'll if they could reboot The Godfather, they would.
That's coming too, I bet.
They probably didn't. Yeah, but see, I think they softened the dole by doing that offer thing first. They're like, look, we're gonna give you. Look at this. It's a behind the scenes kind of thing. Like that's slowly trying to say, look. Now we're gonna. You let us do that. Now we're gonna reboot it. But so it's just a matter of time. Like let's not fool ourselves. It's gonna happen. So the question is, so are you saying is like don't do Buffy at all, like just pick another Slayer?
No, I'm saying you could do Buffy, but don't try to. You don't have to do the whole Scooby Gang high school thing. That's what I mean. Like you could do Buffy, yeah, of course. She's the main.
Okay, yeah, okay. I was just trying to. I'm like, wait, is he saying don't do? Okay.
Oh no, please do Buffy.
Yeah, no. I think. I mean, look. You can't. If you're going to tell me you're rebooting or bringing Buffy back, whether it's a new continuity or not, you can't do it and say Buffy the Vampire Slayer without having Buffy in there.
Right. No.
Like it's so. the thing is, and look, outside of a Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer kind of miniseries, Sarah Michelle Gellar, I doubt would be back. So you're gonna have to recast.
You know, it'd be cool though. What if she was the Watcher?
Oh, okay, that I would. Yeah. I mean, look, if they brought her back in any capacity.
Oh well, yeah. I don't care what it is.
She could read the phone book for an hour, and I'd watch it.
She could be the narrator.
Yeah,
like we don't even see her; we just hear her.
Give me her voice. Yeah, exactly. So I'm a sucker. Bring her back any way you want. I'm there. But realistically, it's either Buffy the Last Vampire Slayer or she's training the next Slayer. So yeah, but I'm leaning towards they're going to recast Buffy.
Yeah,
is my thing. So anytime I talk about this, I kind of like to prepare when I'm talking with fans or to fans about a reboot of Buffy. Prepare yourself for the recast. It's going to happen. And, you and I have seen it through various characters in media. It's like, oh, no, I want this person and only this person. Well, look, for the thing to endure, the same person cannot play the character forever. Like, that is the kind of problem that I think the MCU has now, like the spoiled kind of scenario that the MCU has presented, because, well, we got Robert Downey Jr. for 10 years. Why can't we have, and we got Hugh Jackman for 17 years. Why can't this person just play the character forever? It's like, I'm okay. I'd almost like to go back to the days where you could recast the character and just continue telling your story.
Well, no actor is bigger than any character.
Right.
That's just the way I feel
exactly.
about it.
So yeah, you're 100% right.
I'm a Bond guy. I love James Bond, but I know every actor I see is temporary, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's like, hey, here it is. So I always like to tell audiences, especially in the Buffy universe, because it hasn't happened yet. Prepare yourself, because not only will it happen, and I know there's some people that like, don't touch it. But if the idea is good, why can't you reboot it and put it, like I said, put a different, have some familiarity, but put a different spin on it. Right? So I'm not opposed to doing it, number one. And number two is, I understand that the likelihood is a Buffy recast. And so I hope the fact that we almost got it but didn't is the sort of preparation of it's coming eventually, and it's going to be recast. So, fans, I think, should be prepared for both things to happen somewhere down the line, and it's okay. It's just the main, to me, which is always the case. You could recast, you could tell a different story. The storytellers have to have a handle on the material.
Yeah,
that's where it all starts. If you don't have that, you've got nothing.
Yeah, and that's where everything is. It's going to live or die, because you can cast hypothetically, and I think you'll agree with this. They could get Sarah Michelle Gellar back to do something, but if it's terrible, it's terrible.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just going to depend on the execution.
Yeah. Like, here's another example, just to prove the point. I don't like most people in their right mind, and I'm kidding when I say that, but most people in their right mind don't like Batman and Robin, right?
Well, sir, we are done.
No, but
I get you.
I think on a one-to-one level, we can all agree that that's not a good movie. Like, at the basis of whatever. But I don't think that fault lies on George Clooney. Like, I've always said, given the right material, George Clooney could make a fantastic Batman.
Agreed. I didn't even stick him as the Beyond Batman.
Right. So it comes down to what's the script? Like, what's the story being told here? It all comes down to, yes, the face in front of the camera is important. I'm not saying go get get homeless guy number 5 off the street and put him in a Batman costume and it'll be fine. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying is, before any of that, before the camera rolls on anything, Buffy, Batman, or Superman, whatever, the people writing the material have to have a handle on the character. If they don't, no matter what they do, So prepare yourself for the reboot or revitalization, whatever you want to call it. It's coming, and as Buffyverse fans, let's start to like massage the idea in our head that it's okay if it's not Sarah Michelle Gellar. It's okay if it's not Sarah Michelle. Start telling yourself that, because chances are it's not going to be Sarah Michelle Gellar. And look, I'm the biggest, like, she's on the Multiverse Wife Hall of Fame list. I'm the biggest here for Nico, who's on sabbatical right now. Here you go, Nico. If you're watching, there
you
it
brought
is.
out the pen.
You're right. So I'm the biggest fan of her. I'm not saying like discard her, forget about her, whatever. I'd love it if she was brought back in a scenario like she's the Watcher or Buffy the Vampire. But I'm just saying, let's prepare ourselves for the eventuality.
And there's so many great actresses that could be Buffy right now. Like, I know this is probably not the best choice, but she keeps coming to mind. Emma Roberts.
Ooh, that's a pretty good choice. Yeah,
I think that'd be a pretty good choice for Buffy.
But would she do like a series type of thing, or would it be more?
Well, she was on that show Scream Queens, wasn't she?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
But I think she's a bit older now, so I don't know.
It would have to be like a premium kind of.
Which is kind of what I would want. I don't know about you, but I don't want it to go like the CW.
I don't think much is going to the CW. I don't think much is going to the CW anyway, because they're being sold. So
yeah, I don't think so either. But like, put it on Amazon or
Paramount. I guess it would be Hulu. It would probably have to be Hulu because of the Disney. Well, because remember, Buffy is a Disney princess now because she's owned by 20th Century Fox. Is owned by.
Is that how it works out? I thought she was owned by WB still.
I think it's a Fox deal. Because
I know the movie was.
Whenever you read the comics, it says property of or licensed by way of 20th Century Fox or whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah, then it would be Hulu. Yeah.
So Disney. It would be Disney Plus by way of Hulu or whatever.
Yeah, you guys have that Disney Plus Star thing, I think.
Yeah, so basically Disney Plus. We have, as part of the Disney Plus package, we have Hulu.
Right.
Like, it's built in. So like that's how I watch The Orville, for example. Right?
Yeah, we would just have it on Hulu here.
Yeah. So it's one shared thing. So that's where it would probably land when they eventually do it. And you and I, let's just, before we go to break and come back with a comic, we were banting about it, and I think it's a good suggestion. If you're going with a fresher face, let's say for Buffy, then, and a lot of WWE people are making the transition to acting, I say cast Alexa Bliss as the rebooted Buffy, and let's go. Her and Sarah Michelle Gellar appear to be on some level some type of friendship there because they follow each other, they comment on each other's Instagrams. I think Sarah Michelle Gellar was at her wedding, so I don't know.
Probably because Freddie Prinze Jr. They might have the WWE connection.
Right. So it's like, to me, 1 + 1 = 2, and if you're gonna make me guarantee watch and not put Sarah Michelle Gellar in there, the only other way to guarantee, look, it's Buffy. I'll be there. Who am I kidding? But if you want to get, it's Buffy. I'm there regardless. But if you want to get my excitement to, like guaranteed, like I'm hyped for this. If I saw, on Deadline, Alexa Bliss to star in Buffy reboot, that would do it.
You're going to use that GIF again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The Futurama GIF.
Yeah, absolutely. Take my money. Yeah, exactly.
I think she'd be a great choice, too, though.
That's my suggestion. You said Emma Roberts, so we'll go with those two for now. But if the reboot ever gets re-announced or re-put into play, we'll come on and start doing a more deep dive into potential fan castings when the time is right. So that'll be an episode for some point in the future.
Hopefully soon. I
would hope so. Let's get it going. I'm ready for it. And while we're at it, might as well do Firefly too, because they're going to do that too. But what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and on the other side we'll come back and we'll talk about Buffy 97 issue number 1. So stay tuned.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows. which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, we have a comic book to discuss, which is Buffy 97 #1. So, Chris, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, when I picked it up, I wasn't sure what it was going to be because I'd already been disappointed by the last Vampire Slayer, but I'd liked the Angel book. I forget what the Angel book is called.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it's pretty good. We'll have to do that.
It's a fun book. So it was kind of like a 50, like, am I going to like this? Am I not? But whatever, I'm going to try. It's Buffy.
Yeah.
And I walked away pretty surprised by it because it felt, I know it's easy to say this, but it felt exactly like the TV series. It's written very well. The characters are so familiar. And the situation that we see is clearly something we would have had on TV 20 years ago.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The scenario fits with something they would have done back in the day. Again, I don't know now, by today's TV or streaming standards, if they would have done a plot like that. I just don't know.
It's pretty wacky, so.
Yeah. But back then, guaranteed it would have been in an episode. And the other thing you said was, the characters, at least the ones that we saw, felt...
Yeah, there's not too many of them in the book.
Yeah. Felt like on point with their TV counterparts. Now, you had mentioned the Angel book.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of it kind of feels in that same vein, in the sense that with the Angel book, the idea, the conceit is that Angel and Cordelia are starring in their own TV show, which is kind of like a meta type of...
Yeah, it's fun though.
Right, it is. And so with Buffy, with this Buffy 97, when they're talking about when they're changing wardrobe and all that stuff, and they're talking about like the big wigs, and I'm like, wait a minute, are they? And then there was that opening couple of pages where they did it in like an opening credits of a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, wait a minute, are these versions of Buffy and Willow and Spike and thing stars of a TV show too, or they didn't really delve into that beyond that initial. But I think that was supposed to be the original conceit of the book.
Okay, I didn't think of that one. Maybe
the original conceit of this book, it changed at some point during the production of it, was that the actors on the show were going to be filming an episode of the show and then put in a real life situation where they had to fight a vampire or a monster or some sort of incident.
Is that one was from Max Bemis?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the conceit of the book changed, but I think there was a little bit of leftover. Without going into it too much, they kind of merged the two in a small way. Because that intro felt very much like what I was used to with the Angel miniseries kind of thing, right? So
I thought it was just to mimic the TV series.
Okay, it could be. You could be right. Yeah. But it just brought me into that kind of frame of mind, which was interesting. But so what did you make of the sort of conceit of the story where they were getting together to sort of teach Giles how to bowl because he is in a relationship and he told his significant the significant other that he knew how to bowl and she's in a bowling league, so now he's going to impress her. And we've got Buffy, Willow, and Spike, of all people, counseling Giles.
So the thing about that is, now I said everybody's familiar with Spike. I feel like they really took that last season version of Spike.
Yeah.
Which was probably my least favorite version of Spike.
Right.
To see him back was like, all right, fine.
Filling in the angel role. Yeah, that's what he was doing at the end there. He was kind of being the angel kind of.
Yeah, it was that was a little different, but it's still the show, just not my favorite version. But as far as the Giles thing, I thought that was cool. It fleshed out Giles because we did have those moments of levity with Giles throughout the series, so it would make sense that it carries over here. I do think the scenario was probably meant to be a little bit more fun than it actually was,
Right.
But I liked it. I liked the back and forth between him and Spike mostly.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like, because Buffy and Willow end up getting themselves in trouble when they go on a shopping spree because there's a fashion designer in town there and they want to check out, the line and all that jazz.
Killer magazines.
Yeah, right. So, but the idea, the conceit that they are teaching Giles about dating and how to dress and how to how to bowl, like he's the one for, for 7+ years he was the one playing the role of the teacher, the life, kind of giving the life lessons, right? So to see that flipped in a way like this is fun to have it play out that way. Like I like that. But you're right. The banter. The best part about that whole scenario is the banter between him and Spike.
Yeah, the Kenny Loggins thing, and then they come back to it. He really likes that Kenny G song.
Yeah. So I really, I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Again, it felt like you could hear when reading, at least I could imagine, Anthony Stewart Head and James Marsters doing this back and forth.
Oh, definitely. They did. They did a good job of making them feel like them. Yeah.
And I really like the art style. The art style really worked for this particular book. Like, it wasn't like that they were the exact, replicas of the actor, because it wasn't that kind of art style. But they were unmistakably those characters.
You could tell they were inspired by, is what I would say.
Exactly. It's like, have you read the Batman 89 and Superman 78 books?
I read some at 89.
Okay, so it's kind of like that vibe, where it's inspired by, but it's not an exact.
Yeah, I go for that.
Yeah,
because Keaton's not like one for one in that book, but it's close enough.
He has the gray temples, and because obviously they don't want to pay, crap ton of money. Yeah, so funnily enough, and off topic, the Superman 78, I think it looks even more like Reeve than the Batman 89 looks like Keaton.
Oh yeah, the 78 book I think is one for one.
Almost, yeah.
It's close.
It's really close. So I don't know if DC for that one was like, sure, we'll give money to the estate, or we'll donate money.
I think they just owe the creators at this point for Superman, so it doesn't even matter. Probably,
yeah, that's a good point. It could be, but so yeah, this was more along the Batman 89 kind of track, where they look closely to, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Allison Hannigan, et cetera, but it's not an exact one for one kind of deal. Speaking of Buffy and Willow, what did you think of that whole sort of situation that they got themselves in? Getting trapped in that magazine?
So the series was at its best, I think, when it was the character stuff. Of course, the monsters, and that was all fun, but the character stuff is what made it endearing and why you stuck with it.
Right.
And in here, you get that, but it's also classic to have this wacky plot, because the plot was really out there. They get sucked into a magazine that's, I guess, like a demonic person or lady is the. I don't even know how you describe her.
Is the fashion? Yeah.
I don't know how you describe Madame Wand, but it was it's just a really weird plot, but it works somehow.
I guess first, it would be a demon or a witch, maybe.
Yeah, but she lives in the book.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing, but it works somehow.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't work. Because on paper, if you explain to somebody, like I'm sure the way I just described it makes no sense.
Right, yeah.
But when you're reading, you're like, oh, okay. You're like sucked into it.
Yeah, it just... When I was watching, when they got sucked into the book, I'm like, wait, what is going on? Like, I'm confused.
I was too, yeah.
But then it's like, as the character started monologuing, right, and going, I'm like, yeah, all right, this feels like the show. I'm like, I'll roll with it. And then the part of the book that really sort of where you see those two, especially Buffy and Willow, really kind of their characters and their character traits really come through are in the moments where they're talking about to those two roller skaters.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to get their skates because that's one of the ways they got home, right? Is through the thing. And so Buffy's kind of like, at first they didn't want to give up their roller skates, and like Buffy has to kind of make a threat. And Willow's backing her up, like talking her up about, to scare those guys into giving up their thing. That was vintage Buffy and Willow, like that back and forth.
Oh yeah,
was like right out of the show.
That was perfect.
But again, even like the way they got out it's so weird. Like it's like how is any of this working? But yet it just worked.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to look at this book, because we could easily say we like it because it reminds us of one of our favorite shows.
Yeah,
that's easy for us to say.
Yeah,
but even if you just look at it as a story by itself, where you're not familiar with the characters, I think it would still work.
Yeah, I think there's enough there that you could get, even if you're not 100% sold on the getting trapped in the book and getting out via roller skating and all that jazz. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but that's basically what it was. Even if you're not sold on that portion, the character interactions, which is what you said was the main strength of the show, and the character dynamics, those are all there. That I think at the very least, if you for whatever reason saw the cover of this book and said, I've never read anything or I've never seen anything Buffy, but I'm going to pick this book up for whatever reason, if that was your motivation as you passed by, into the comic book store and you came upon this book, if that was your motivation, I think at the very least, it would the character dynamics would intrigue you enough to maybe go seek out more Buffy comics.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Especially, I think a lot of people did do that, considering it says number 1 on it.
Yeah.
It's very, okay, this is nothing to lose. It's a new start.
Which, I don't know, again, I think from everything that I understood, this is just a one-off.
Yes. I was looking around last night to kind of confirm before we did this today, because I really want another issue of this, but it's not happening. What they're doing instead is, I think it's in November, they're going to release this plus... I tell us off air, but the 25th anniversary book with the short stories, they're putting them together in one book, and I think that's coming out in November.
Okay. All right.
That's what we're getting instead of another issue of this.
Okay. All right. It makes sense in a way. But I think this works, like you said, overall for us, it'll work because it calls back, it's like a wacky lost episode in the later season of the show. So for us, it'll work because there's familiarity. It brings us back to nostalgia of what we knew. And I think for newbies, it'll work because at the very least, I think there's enough there that even if you can't swallow, some parts of the plot, I think the characters will draw you in and have you seeking out more. And there is a lot more. Like right now, I know you say you're not caught up on the comics. But the fallout from the multiverse, do you mind slight spoilers?
No, I'm cool with that.
Okay, so the fallout of the multiverse storyline is that the current Buffy series, because every comic company does that, they started with a new number one, Chris. Shock! I know you're shocking, and I'm sure
Oh, did that already come out?
you almost fell out of your chair with that new number one. It's good. It's called the Vampire Slayer. So they've taken Buffy out of the title,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and reason being because the fallout of the multiverse storyline is that temporarily Willow is the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, is she still a witch?
She is, but her powers are the witch aspect of her is going a little wonky because so basically the fallout of the multiverse story was so much for Buffy to have, like it overwhelmed Buffy to the point where she and Giles concocted some kind of spell to kind of ease Buffy's like stress and tension, and something went awry, and her Slayer abilities got transferred to Willow, and the fallout is Buffy doesn't remember being the Slayer.
Oh, okay.
So that's where we are in the story. So it's an interesting dynamic because now Willow's got to do the slayering, and she's not very adept at that, right? So they've kind of swapped places in terms of demeanor and kind of character, not their characteristics per se, but they've kind of done somewhat of a swap. And they've added Faith in there for a very particular reason, which is very interesting.
I
I won't spoil that, but Faith is involved.
When Faith pops up, I am happy.
Oh yeah, since I got the pen out, Eliza Dushku is also on the list, folks. A lot of people on that show. Anyway,
She was great.
So there's a lot of cool stuff in this. At first, when I'm like, wait a minute, the Vampire Slayer. I'm like, what's going on? Because they tell you what's going on, but it's more like I've laid it out because I have 4 or 5 issues to go off of, so I know a little bit more of the story. But when they start, they're very ambiguous with what's happened. So when you pick it up, you're like, wait a minute, why is Buffy not in the title? And why is Willow doing the slaying? Like, but then as you keep reading, they fill you in, right? So
how many issues is it?
I think there's only been 3 or 4.
Okay.
So far, but I mean, eventually they'll get. I'm assuming that the end game is to get Buffy back her abilities and put her in the central title role again. I think that's where the end game is. But it's quite interesting, and so like I would encourage people to pick that up and also go back and find a trade edition of the multiverse storyline, or get it via Comixology/Amazon because it's Amazon now. And if you do digital is your thing, start with the multiverse story and then dovetail into this. I think they're doing some good stuff there now. It's really picked up, and it's very interesting. So I recommend if Buffy 97 kind of piqued your interest, then that's where I would suggest people go next. So that's my recommendation. But is there anything else that you wanted to make note of in regard to this particular issue, the Buffy 97?
I think we covered it. I mean, the art's nice. It's got a cool story. It's reminiscent of what we know. And I think it will work well for someone who's not familiar.
Right.
But I did have a question for you.
Yeah.
Where do you think this would fall? Because I don't think it's meant to be in continuity. But if it were, where would you think? I think it would be maybe the second to last season. Or maybe just the last season.
Well, I would agree with that because there is some romantic sort of tension between, or tension is not the right word.
There's something there.
There seem to be some romantic leanings between Buffy and Spike at the end. Like you get that that's where it's going. So based on that, I would agree that it's right around where you said it is where I had put it.
Yeah, because I was reading it again last night. I was thinking, where would this fall?
It's weird because it's one of those things where it's not in continuity, but you could kind of finagle and make it fit. Yeah, you can make it fit if you really want to. So yeah, it's a fun book. Like it captured my enjoyment for the whole time I read it, and again, I kind of at the start of when they get trapped in the magazine, I'm like, oh boy, but I'm like, okay, because really that could go either way. Like it could be terrible.
Well, I mean, there was a musical episode that came out of nowhere too.
Right, which who expected that?
It's one of the best episodes.
And I'm typically not a fan of musicals.
Oh yeah.
Like I've never been, but they did that. I'm like, it worked. And then, so that's why when I heard, for example, again, slightly off topic, when they announced that the Joker 2 was going to have at least musical elements to it, I'm like, I sat there, I kind of did the Batman gift thing where I did this. And I'm like, well, listen, if Buffy can have a musical, why can't Joker?
Right? That's a whole other topic for me.
Right. I mean, maybe we'll talk about that another time. But so yeah, so this thing, it felt like it was going to be like it could go either way, but ultimately it worked for me. So I would certainly, to longtime fans of the show, I'd recommend it, and to newbies, I'd recommend it too.
I agree.
So with all that being said, let's rate it. So remember, we do out of 5 for the story and out of 5 for the art. So what would you rate this?
I think I'm going to go 4 for the story because it was wackier than I like, but still it worked. Yeah. And the art gets a 5 for me. I love the art.
Yeah. I'll go 3.5 for the story. I liked it, but I was kind of disappointed that in a book that is meant to celebrate, the 25th anniversary of Buffy, we're missing Xander. We're missing, and the central idea. Like I would have liked to see more of a vampire element to the story, in addition to, what we got. So for those reasons, I give it a 3.5. So I knock off a couple of points there. However, the art is an absolute 5. Like I love the art. I think it absolutely fit the story. It fit the universe. Like if they put this artist on one of the main Buffy books, I wouldn't bat an eyelash. It'd be like, all right, yeah, it fits.
I think they should.
So, yeah, exactly. So, so overall, 3.5 for story, 5 for the art. So that's what, 8.5
Something
out
like
of 10. That's if most comics could get that score on a consistent basis, I think the creators would be happy. So yeah, that's my reading of it. I enjoyed it. I had a blast, and at the end of the day, it made me want to read more Buffy. And so
that's where I'm at too. I'm going to check out that story you were talking about because I haven't. I didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah. So they did their job. They hooked me enough, and they made me want to go down even more of a rabbit hole. So there you go.
It's just nice to have good Buffy content because I feel like we've had the comic for a while, but it's just nice to have them more prominent, I guess.
But there was a period where the boom, like there was that transition period.
Yeah. Where
they did go away, and it was like, there's nothing.
And then they started some other things that did not work. So
yeah. So overall, solid stuff, and I can't wait to see where the Buffy and Angel universe goes next. Chris, it was a pleasure having you on, and I think this is going to be a thing that we get together and do more often. And so a lot more fun to be had, but this was a good starting point for us to dive into. And so in the meantime, before we get together again to talk some more Buffy, if people want to chat with you about Buffy online, where can they find you?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Like I told you, I don't really get to talk Buffy a lot, so this was awesome. Everybody can follow me on Twitter at thatchris70, but I kind of prefer you follow my podcast, G of the Geeks, on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a great show. Definitely worth a listen. It's definitely in my rotation of shows. Like I've got a core, let's say, 5 or 6 podcasts that I keep track of. Usually what I do is because I like to binge them while I'm working at my computer doing something.
Yeah.
So I'll let a couple episodes of each pile up, and then I'll just go. Like for instance, for your guys, I'll do like 2 or 3. I'll focus on yours for 2 or 3 episodes in a row, and then I'll go to Holy Backcast for 2 or 3 episodes in a row, and then I'll listen to Batman on Film guys for a couple episodes in a row. And so that's how I like to, because when you're recording them, it's like you're doing your own, and then it's like, all right, now where am I with the other ones that I was listening to? So it's like sometimes they build up, and it's like, so it's like, all right, since I'm building them up, I'll binge Netflix style. But you guys do a great job there,
Thank you.
I can't recommend it enough. And then if you want to follow me on social media, it's at Adam_Leafs fan. The Multiverse Musings podcast network has its own Twitter handle where I just basically post the episodes. But if somebody tweets at that account, I'll answer them. So it's at MMNPDC. We have a Facebook group, which is somewhere in the description below here. Click that. I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there if you like. But until next time, remember that Buffy the Vampire Slayer is forever, from the first slay to the last. So long, everybody.